The wind was howling through Soldier Field that November afternoon in 1977, but inside the locker room, a young running back sat quietly tying his cleats. His teammates were pumping themselves up, shouting and banging on lockers, but Walter Payton just smiled to himself. He had a secret that day. He was about to run for 275 yards against the Minnesota Vikings, setting a single-game rushing record that would stand for decades. But what made this moment special wasn't just the record. It was the fact that earlier that morning, Walter had visited a children's hospital, spending 3 hours playing games with sick kids, making them laugh with his silly voices and magic tricks. This was Walter Payton, a man who could destroy defenses on Sunday and heal hearts on Monday. Most people know Walter Payton as Sweetness, the Chicago Bears legend, who rushed for over 16,000 yards in his career. But the real story of Walter Payton goes far beyond the football field. Born in Columbia, Mississippi on July 25, 1954, Walter grew up as the youngest of 3 children in a modest household where hard work wasn't just expected, it was survival. His father, Peter, worked at a factory making parachutes, while his mother, Aline, kept the family together with love, discipline, and the best cornbread in Mississippi. If you enjoy this soothing story, please like the video, subscribe to NFL Legends YouTube channel, and ring the notification bell. Walter's childhood wasn't filled with fancy toys or expensive camps. Instead, he spent his days racing through the woods behind his house, jumping over creeks, dodging trees, and unknowingly developing the agility that would one day make him unstoppable on the football field. Growing up in the segregated South during the 1960s meant Walter understood struggle from an early age. The Payton family lived in a small house on a dirt road where the bathroom was outside and hot water was a luxury. But what they lacked in material wealth, they made up for in spirit. Peter Payton was a stern but loving father who taught his children that respect was earned through action, not words. He would often tell Walter and his siblings, "Don't tell me what you're going to do, show me what you've done." This philosophy would shape Walter's entire approach to life. When other kids were playing, Walter was working, delivering newspapers before school, cutting grass after school, and helping his mother with chores late into the evening. School was where Walter first discovered he was different from other kids, but not in the way you might think. He wasn't the biggest or the strongest. In fact, he was rather small for his age, earning him the nickname Spider because of his skinny legs. But Walter had something special, an incredible ability to focus and an even more incredible tolerance for pain. His older brother Eddie was the football star at Jefferson High School, and Walter wanted nothing more than to follow in his footsteps. The problem was, Walter was terrified of getting hit. Can you imagine? The future NFL legend, who would become known for delivering punishing blows to defenders, was actually scared of contact sports as a teenager. Music became Walter's first love before football ever entered the picture. He played drums in the school band and had natural rhythm that made him popular at school dances. His bandmates would later joke that Walter attacked the drums the same way he would eventually attack opposing defenses, with controlled fury and perfect timing. The band director, Charles Boston, saw something special in Walter beyond his musical talent. He noticed how Walter never missed practice, always helped set up equipment for others, and stayed late to help younger students learn their parts. These weren't the actions of someone seeking glory. They were the actions of someone who understood that greatness comes from serving others. The transformation from Walter the drummer to Walter the football player happened almost by accident. During his junior year at Jefferson High School, the football coach was desperate for players. The team was losing badly, and many students had quit. Eddie Payton, who had graduated and gone on to play college football, came back to visit and convinced his little brother to give football a try. Walter agreed, but only if he could play a position where he wouldn't get hit much. The coach, Charles Davis, had other plans. He saw Walter's speed during a simple sprint drill and immediately knew he had found something special. But speed alone doesn't make a great running back. What Coach Davis discovered was that once Walter overcame his fear of contact, He actually seemed to enjoy it. Not in a mean way, but in the way an artist enjoys painting or a musician enjoys playing. Training under Coach Davis was like military boot camp mixed with philosophy class. Davis didn't just teach football, he taught life. Every practice started with a lesson about character, about how the way you practice determines the way you play, and how the way you play determines the way you live. Walter absorbed these lessons like a sponge. He would arrive at practice an hour early to run extra sprints, stay an hour late to work on his footwork, and then go home and do hundreds of sit-ups and push-ups before bed. His mother would find him asleep on the floor, still in his practice clothes, too exhausted to make it to his bed. By his senior year, Walter had transformed from the skinny kid afraid of contact into a devastating weapon on the football field. He rushed for over 3,000 yards in his final high school season and led Jefferson High School to an undefeated season. But statistics never told the whole Walter Payton story. After games, while his teammates celebrated, Walter would quietly slip away to visit elderly neighbors, bringing them groceries his mother had prepared, or simply sitting with them to listen to their stories. One neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, would later tell reporters that Walter never forgot her birthday in all the years he knew her, even after he became famous. College recruitment should have been easy for someone with Walter's talent, but this was Mississippi in the early 1970s, and opportunities for black athletes were still limited. The big southern universities weren't interested, and many northern schools thought Mississippi was too far to scout. Jackson State University, a historically black college just 40 miles from Columbia, became Walter's destination, and it would prove to be the perfect choice. At Jackson State, Walter met Bob Hill, the coach who would refine his raw talent into professional-grade skill. Hill was tough but fair, demanding but supportive. He saw in Walter not just a great athlete, but a future leader. The first day of practice at Jackson State was a revelation for Walter's new teammates. Here was this quiet kid from Columbia who barely spoke above a whisper off the field, but when he put on the helmet, he became a different person. He would challenge defenders to hit him harder, laugh when they knocked him down, and bounce up asking for more. But it wasn't arrogance or showing off. Walter genuinely loved the challenge. The chess match between runner and defender, the physical poetry of avoiding a tackle or breaking through one. His teammates started calling him Sweetness, not because he was soft, but because his running style was so smooth, so effortless, that it looked sweet. Jackson State became Walter's laboratory for innovation. He developed his famous high-step running style, which looked like dancing, but was actually a sophisticated way to avoid leg tackles while maintaining balance. He practiced jumping over defenders, literally leaping over players who went low. He worked on his stiff arm until it became a weapon as dangerous as any linebacker's tackle. But most importantly, he developed his conditioning to a level that seemed superhuman. While other players were gasping for air in the fourth quarter, Walter was asking the coach to give him the ball more. The statistics at Jackson State were staggering: over 3,500 yards rushing, 66 touchdowns, and numerous records that still stand today. But Walter's college coach, Bob Hill, would always say that Walter's greatest achievement wasn't what he did on the field, but how he carried himself off it. He tutored struggling students, organized charity drives for local families in need, and never missed a class despite his athletic schedule. Professors remembered him as the student who sat in the front row, asked thoughtful questions, and turned in assignments early. The 1975 NFL draft approached with Walter projected as a first-round pick, but not necessarily a top-5 selection. Some scouts worried he was too small for the NFL at 5'10" and 200 pounds. Others questioned whether his success at a small college would translate to the professional level. The Chicago Bears, picking fourth, had bigger needs than running back, but their new general manager, Jim Finks, had done his homework. He had traveled to Mississippi, talked to Walter's high school teachers, his neighbors, his church pastor. What Finks discovered was that Walter Payton wasn't just a football player. He was a force of nature wrapped in humility. Draft day was nerve-wracking for the Payton family. They gathered around a small television in their Columbia home, waiting to hear Walter's name called. The first pick went, then the second, then the third. When the Bears selected Walter with the fourth pick, the house erupted in celebration. But Walter himself remained calm, quietly thanking God and immediately calling Coach Hill and Coach Davis to thank them for their guidance. That night, instead of partying, Walter went for a 10-mile run through the hills of Columbia, preparing his body for the challenge ahead. Chicago in 1975 was a city hungry for football success. The Bears, one of the NFL's founding franchises, hadn't won a championship since 1963. The team was struggling, the fans were frustrated, and the pressure on any rookie was immense. Walter arrived in Chicago with a single suitcase and a determination to prove he belonged. His first meeting with Bears coach Jack Pardee set the tone for his professional career. Pardee, a tough Texan who didn't believe in coddling players, told Walter bluntly that he would have to earn every yard, every carry, every ounce of respect. Walter's response was simple: just give me the ball. Training camp was brutal. NFL defenders were bigger, faster, and meaner than anything Walter had faced in college. His first carry in a preseason game resulted in a loss of 3 yards and a hit so hard that Walter saw stars. Some rookies might have been discouraged, but Walter saw it as education. He studied film relentlessly, learning the tendencies of every defender he would face. He arrived at the facility before dawn to run stairs, stayed after practice to catch passes from the backup quarterbacks, and transformed his body through a revolutionary weight training program that was uncommon for running backs at the time. Walter's rookie season was solid but not spectacular: 679 yards and 7 touchdowns. Critics said he was too small, that he wouldn't last in the NFL's punishing environment. Walter heard the criticism and used it as fuel. That offseason, he embarked on a training regimen that would become legendary. He found a hill near his Mississippi home that rose at a 45-degree angle for about 60 yards. Every morning he would run up that hill 20 times, 30 times, sometimes 50 times, until his legs felt like they would explode. Then he would do it again in the afternoon. Neighbors thought he had lost his mind, but Walter was building something, not just physical strength, but mental toughness that would separate him from every other player in the league. The 1976 season announced Walter Payton's arrival as a force in the NFL. He rushed for over 1,300 yards and scored 13 touchdowns. But more importantly, he began to display the versatility that would define his career. Walter wasn't just a runner. He was a complete football player. He could catch passes out of the backfield with hands as soft as a wide receiver's. He could throw the football, actually throw it with accuracy and power, making him a constant threat for trick plays. And perhaps most surprisingly, for someone his size, he was one of the best blocking backs in the league, taking on linebackers and defensive ends with a ferocity that earned their respect. But it was November 20th, 1977, that Walter Payton truly became sweetness in the minds of football fans forever. Playing against the Minnesota Vikings, one of the best defenses in the league, Walter did something that seemed impossible. He rushed for 275 yards, breaking O.J. Simpson's single-game record. What made this performance even more remarkable was that Walter had the flu. He had been vomiting before the game, could barely eat, and his teammates wondered if he would even play. Not only did he play, but he also dominated in a way that left everyone, including the Vikings defenders, in awe. After the game, Minnesota's legendary coach, Bud Grant, said simply, "I've never seen anything like that. He's not human." The record-breaking performance against Minnesota changed everything for Walter and the Bears. Suddenly, Chicago had a superstar, someone who could fill Soldier Field and give the team a chance to win every Sunday. But fame never changed Walter Payton. He still lived modestly, driving the same car, eating at the same restaurants, and maintaining the same circle of close friends. He married his college sweetheart Connie in 1976, and they built a life centered on family, faith, and giving back to the community. What separated Walter from other superstars wasn't just his talent, but his approach to the game. He practiced harder than anyone, even when he was already the best player on the field. Bears teammates tell stories of Walter challenging the entire defense to tackling drills, where he would run full speed at defenders just to keep his edge sharp. He memorized not just his assignments, but everyone else's too, often correcting offensive linemen on their blocking schemes or receivers on their routes. This wasn't showing off. It was Walter's way of making everyone around him better. The late 1970s and early 1980s were frustrating years for Walter professionally. Despite his individual brilliance, the Bears struggled as a team. They went through multiple coaches, countless quarterbacks, and season after season of disappointment. Lesser players might have demanded a trade or sulked about the lack of success, but Walter saw it as an opportunity to prove his greatness. He played through injuries that would have sidelined other players for weeks. A separated shoulder, bruised ribs, pulled hamstrings, Walter played through them all, never complaining, never making excuses. His durability became the stuff of legend. In 13 seasons, Walter missed just one game, and that was only because the coach held him out of a meaningless season finale in his rookie year. Think about that for a moment. In a sport where the average career lasts 3 years and injuries are guaranteed, Walter Payton played 186 out of a possible 187 games. This wasn't luck. It was preparation. Walter's training regimen was so intense, his body so well conditioned, that he could absorb punishment that would break other players. The 1984 season brought a dramatic change to Walter's career with the arrival of Mike Ditka as head coach. Ditka, a former Bears player himself, understood what he had in Walter Payton, not just a great runner, but the heart and soul of the franchise. Ditka built his offense around Walter, but more importantly, he built a team culture that matched Walter's work ethic and determination. The Bears drafted talented players, brought in key free agents, and suddenly, Walter wasn't carrying the team alone anymore. That 1984 season saw the Bears reach the NFC Championship game, their first real taste of success in Walter's career. Though they lost to the eventual Super Bowl champion San Francisco 49ers, something had changed in Chicago. The Bears had discovered their identity, a punishing defense, a powerful running game led by Walter, and a toughness that reflected their city's blue-collar spirit. Walter, now 30 years old and in his 10th season, finally had real hope for a championship. The 1985 season began with expectations higher than any Bears team had faced in 20 years. The defense, led by coordinator Buddy Ryan, was devastating. The offense, with Walter as its centerpiece, was efficient and explosive. But what made this team special was its personality, and much of that came from Walter. Despite the presence of louder personalities like Jim McMahon and William Refrigerator Perry, Walter remained the team's emotional leader. He led by example, never asking teammates to do something he wouldn't do himself. As the 1985 season progressed, it became clear the Bears weren't just good. They were historically great. They dominated opponents, outscoring them by margins that seemed impossible in the modern NFL. Walter was having another outstanding season, rushing for over 1,300 yards despite sharing carries with backup runners more than ever before. But for Walter, individual statistics had become secondary to the team's success. He blocked with even more enthusiasm, caught passes when needed, and even played decoy to set up other players for success. The Bears finished the regular season 15-1, and Walter finally got his chance to play in the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 20 against the New England Patriots should have been Walter's crowning moment. The Bears dominated, winning 46-10, but in a cruel twist of fate, Walter never scored a touchdown in the game. When the Bears reached the goal line, Ditka gave the ball to William Refrigerator Perry, the massive defensive lineman, for the touchdown instead of Walter. It was a decision that haunted Ditka for the rest of his life, and one that hurt Walter deeply, though he never publicly complained about it. After the Super Bowl victory, at what should have been the happiest moment of his professional life, teammates found Walter sitting alone in the locker room, tears in his eyes. When asked what was wrong, he said he wasn't crying because he didn't score, but because he realized how hard it was to get to this moment and how he might never get back. It was a prophetic statement. The Bears never returned to the Super Bowl during Walter's career. The years following the Super Bowl victory were bittersweet for Walter. He continued to play at an elite level, breaking Jim Brown's all-time rushing record on October 7, 1984, against the New Orleans Saints. The game stopped, the crowd erupted, and Walter was presented with the game ball. But true to his character, Walter immediately sought out his offensive linemen and gave them credit for the achievement. He understood that no running back gains a single yard without the men blocking in front of him. Walter's final season in 1987 was emotional for everyone involved with the Bears and the NFL. At 33, he could still play, but his body was finally showing the wear of 13 brutal seasons. He announced before the season that it would be his last, turning every game into a farewell tour. Opposing teams, even fierce rivals like the Green Bay Packers, honored him with ceremonies. Fans who had booed him for years stood and applauded. Walter Payton had transcended team loyalties to become something bigger, a symbol of how the game should be played. His final game at Soldier Field was on December 20th, 1987, against the Seattle Seahawks. The weather was typical Chicago, cold, windy, and miserable. But 55,000 fans stayed until the end, chanting, "Walter, Walter, Walter," as he took his final carries. After the game, Walter ran a lap around the field, high-fiving fans, hugging security guards, and thanking everyone who had supported him. It was a goodbye, but it didn't feel like an ending. Retirement for Walter Payton wasn't about golf courses and television commentary. He threw himself into business ventures and charitable work with the same intensity he had brought to football. He opened restaurants, started a racing team, and became involved in various business ventures. But his real passion was his charitable foundation, particularly his work with children. Walter understood that his fame gave him a platform, and he was determined to use it to make a difference. The Walter Payton Foundation focused on helping underprivileged children, providing scholarships, supporting youth programs, and creating opportunities for kids who reminded him of himself. Talented, but lacking resources. Walter personally involved himself in these efforts, not just writing checks, but showing up, mentoring kids, and using his story to inspire them. He would tell them that success wasn't about being the biggest or strongest, but about outworking everyone else and never giving up. Walter also became an advocate for organ donation, a cause that would take on tragic personal significance later. He worked with various organizations to promote awareness, using his celebrity to highlight the importance of donation. He would joke that he had already donated his body to football for 13 years, so organ donation seemed like a natural next step. Nobody knew at the time how prophetic those words would become. In the business world, Walter experienced both successes and failures. His restaurant ventures had mixed results, and his racing team struggled financially. But Walter approached business the same way he approached football, with determination and a willingness to learn from mistakes. He surrounded himself with smart people, asked questions, and never assumed his football success automatically translated to business acumen. This humility served him well even when ventures didn't succeed as planned. The early 1990s saw Walter transition into a role as an elder statesman of football. He worked as a spokesman for various companies, appeared at corporate events, and became a regular presence at Bears games. But he never became one of those former players who lived in the past. When young players asked for advice, Walter would tell them to create their own legacy, not try to recreate his. He understood that the game was evolving and that the next generation would need to find their own way. Family remained central to Walter's life after football. His children, Jarrett and Brittany, grew up with a famous father, but were raised to understand that fame was temporary and character was permanent. Walter coached their youth sports teams, attended school events, and tried to give them as normal a childhood as possible, despite his celebrity. Connie Payton later said that Walter was even more dedicated as a father than he had been as a football player, which, considering his legendary work ethic, was saying something. In early 1999, Walter began feeling unusually tired. The man who had run up hills until he collapsed, who had never missed a game due to injury, suddenly found himself exhausted by simple activities. At first, he attributed it to age and the accumulated toll of his football career. But when the fatigue persisted and he began losing weight, Connie convinced him to see a doctor. The diagnosis was devastating: primary sclerosing cholangitis, a rare liver disease that would require a transplant. The news of Walter's illness shocked the sports world. This was Sweetness, the indestructible running back who had taken on entire defenses and won. Surely he would beat this too. Walter initially kept the severity of his condition private, not wanting pity or special treatment. But as his condition worsened, he realized he had an opportunity to help others even in his illness. He went public with his diagnosis, becoming an advocate for organ donation and raising awareness about liver disease. The final months of Walter's life were a testament to his character. Even as his body failed him, his spirit remained strong. He continued to make public appearances when possible, using his remaining energy to promote organ donation and encourage others facing health challenges. Former teammates, opponents, and fans rallied around him, but Walter remained focused on others rather than himself. He worried about his family, about the foundation's work continuing, about everything except his own situation. On November 1st, 1999, Walter Payton passed away at the age of 45. The news spread quickly, and the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Soldier Field became a shrine, with thousands of fans leaving flowers, jerseys, and personal notes. Players around the NFL wore number 34 stickers on their helmets. The entire city of Chicago mourned as if they had lost a family member because, in many ways, they had. Walter's funeral was attended by teammates, opponents, celebrities, and ordinary fans who had been touched by his life. Speakers talked not just about his football achievements, but about his character, his generosity, his humor, and his humanity. Mike Ditka, speaking through tears, said that Walter Payton was the greatest Bear of all time, not just because of what he did on the field, but because of who he was off it. The legacy of Walter Payton extends far beyond his 16,726 career rushing yards or his 125 touchdowns. The NFL Man of the Year Award was renamed the Walter Payton Man of the Year Award, recognizing players who excel on the field and make a difference in their communities. It's the only major NFL award named after a player, a fitting tribute to someone who embodied excellence in every aspect of life. Jarrett Payton followed his father's footsteps, playing football at the University of Miami and briefly in the NFL. But more importantly, he and his sister Brittany have continued their father's charitable work, keeping the Walter Payton Foundation active and expanding its reach. They understand that their father's greatest legacy isn't in record books, but in the lives he touched and the example he set. The impact Walter had on the game of football is still evident today. He revolutionized the running back position, showing that a back could be a complete player: runner, receiver, blocker, and even occasional passer. His conditioning programs became the template for future generations. His work ethic became the standard by which all players are measured. When coaches want to motivate players, they still point to Walter Payton as the example of how to prepare and compete. But perhaps Walter's greatest contribution was showing that toughness and kindness weren't mutually exclusive. He was fierce on the field, but gentle off it. He was competitive, but never cruel. He sought excellence, but remained humble. In an era where sports stars often seem larger than life and disconnected from regular people, Walter remained accessible and authentic. He signed autographs until his hand cramped, took pictures with anyone who asked, and never forgot that his success came from the support of others. The hill in Mississippi where Walter trained has become something of a pilgrimage site for athletes and fans. They come to run the same hill that Walter conquered thousands of times, hoping to capture some of his spirit. Most can't make it up more than a few times before collapsing, giving them a new appreciation for Walter's superhuman conditioning, but they keep coming, drawn by the legend of a man who turned a hill into a mountain and then conquered it every day. Today's NFL players, many of whom were children when Walter played, still speak of him with reverence. They study his film, amazed by his combination of power and grace. They read about his work ethic and try to emulate it. They learn about his community service and understand that being a professional athlete carries responsibilities beyond the field. Walter Payton has become more than a football legend. He's become a standard for excellence in all aspects of life. The city of Chicago has never forgotten Walter Payton. His statue stands outside Soldier Field, showing him in his familiar high-stepping style, forever frozen in the act of breaking free from defenders. On game days, fans gather around the statue, touching it for luck, taking pictures, and telling their children about the greatest bear who ever lived. The statue has become more than a memorial. It's a reminder of what's possible when talent meets character. Schools and youth programs across Chicago and Mississippi bear Walter's name, continuing his commitment to education and youth development. These institutions don't just teach sports. They teach the values Walter embodied: hard work, respect, service to others, and never giving up. Students who attend these schools learn about Walter not just as a football player, but as a man who overcame obstacles and used his success to help others. The lessons from Walter's life resonate beyond sports. Business leaders study his approach to preparation and teamwork. Educators use his story to teach perseverance and dedication. Parents point to him as an example of how to handle success with grace and failure with dignity. Walter Payton became what every athlete hopes to become, but few achieve: a role model whose influence transcends their sport. Looking back at Walter Payton's life, what stands out isn't just the records or the highlight reels, though those were spectacular. What stands out is the consistency of his character, from the small boy in Mississippi afraid of contact to the NFL legend who never missed a game. Walter remained true to his values. He never forgot where he came from, never let success change his fundamental nature, and never stopped working to be better, both as a player and as a person. The nickname Sweetness ended up being perfect, though not in the way anyone initially expected. It wasn't about his running style, though that was indeed sweet to watch. It was about the sweetness of his spirit, the way he treated others, the joy he brought to the game and to life. In a sport often characterized by violence and aggression, Walter Payton showed that you could be tough without being mean, competitive without being cruel, and successful without sacrificing your humanity. As we remember Walter Payton today, more than 2 decades after his passing, his influence continues to grow rather than fade. Young players who never saw him play wear number 34 in his honor. Coaches quote his philosophy about preparation and effort. Fans share stories about encounters with him, each one reinforcing the image of a superstar who never acted like one. Walter Payton proved that greatness isn't just about what you achieve, but how you achieve it and what you do with your success. The final measure of Walter Payton's life can't be found in statistics or trophies, though he had plenty of both. It's found in the thousands of lives he touched, the children he inspired, the teammates he elevated, and the standard he set for what it means to be a professional athlete and a good human being. He showed us that sweetness and strength can coexist, that humility and excellence go hand in hand, and that the greatest victories in life often come not from defeating others, but from lifting them up. Walter once said that he wanted to be remembered as a good person first and a good player second. By that measure, he succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. He was indeed a good player, one of the greatest ever to play the game. But more importantly, he was a good person who used his platform to make the world a little better, a little sweeter. That's the true legacy of Walter Payton, and it's one that will endure as long as people play football and strive to be better than they were yesterday. The story of sweetness reminds us that legends aren't born. They're built one day at a time, one hill at a time, one act of kindness at a time. Walter Payton built his legend not just on Sundays in front of thousands, but on all the days in between when no one was watching. He understood that character is what you do when nobody's looking, and by that measure, Walter Payton's character was as impressive as any run he ever made. In the end, Walter Payton's life was like one of his signature runs, starting with humble beginnings, facing obstacles head-on, breaking through barriers with determination and grace, and finishing with a legacy that inspires others to chase their own dreams. He showed us that with enough hard work, dedication, and heart, anyone can achieve greatness. But more importantly, he showed us that true greatness isn't measured in yards gained or touchdowns scored, but in lives touched and examples set. As the sun sets over Soldier Field on autumn Sundays, and the current Bears take the field, the spirit of number 34 still runs with them. Every tough yard gained, every extra effort made, every act of sportsmanship carries a little bit of Walter Payton's legacy forward. He may be gone, but sweetness remains, not just in the record books or the memories of those who saw him play, but in the very soul of the game he loved and the people he inspired. This is the story of Walter Payton, a man who was indeed sweet on and off the field, who turned a game into art and a life into a masterpiece of character and achievement. His journey from the dirt roads of Mississippi to the Hall of Fame wasn't just about football. It was about showing us all what's possible when you combine talent with work ethic, success with humility, and strength with sweetness. If you enjoy this soothing story, please like the video, subscribe to NFL Legends YouTube channel, and ring the notification bell. Walter Payton's story continues to inspire because it's not just the story of a great athlete, it's the story of a great human being who happened to play football better than almost anyone who ever